Think about the last time you were truly alone. Not alone in a room with your phone. Not alone with music playing or a podcast running. Actually alone. Silence. No input. Just you and the space around you. How long did it last before something in you reached for a distraction? For most people, the answer is measured in seconds. Not minutes. Seconds. And the discomfort that arrived in that silence, the restlessness, the low-level unease, the sudden compelling need to check something, do something, fill something. That feeling has a name, and it is far older and far stranger than anything you would guess. Because here is what nobody tells you. Solitude. Real, uninterrupted, unmediated solitude is one of the rarest experiences in the entire history of the human species. Not because people sought to avoid it, but because for nearly all of human existence, it was almost physically impossible to have. Your ancestors were never alone, not in the way you understand the word. And the reason that matters, the reason your relationship with your own silence is so complicated, reaches back to the very first moment a human brain became sophisticated enough to experience the difference between being surrounded and being alone. Here is what you actually are. You are a social animal engineered by millions of years of evolution to exist inside a group. Not near a group. Not in contact with a group via a small glowing rectangle. Inside one. Physically present, acoustically immersed, constantly aware of where every member of your band was, what they were doing, whether the sounds around you were the right sounds. The sounds of known people, familiar movement, the low background hum of other human lives happening nearby. That hum was safety. That hum was information. That hum was the primary signal your nervous system used to confirm that everything was functioning and that you were not about to be eaten. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford spent decades mapping the social architecture of human groups throughout history. His research on what became known as Dunbar's number revealed that the natural human social group hovered consistently around 150 individuals, a number he traced not just through modern communities, but through hunter-gatherer bands, ancient villages, military units, and even the functional size of effective organizations today. That number wasn't arbitrary. It was the number of people a human brain could realistically maintain relationships with, track emotionally, and monitor socially at one time. Go above it, and social cohesion begins to break down. Drop far below it, and something else happens. Something the modern world has a name for, but your ancestors had no concept of. Loneliness. But here's where it gets strange. Because for most of human prehistory, even brief solitude wasn't chosen. It was inflicted. It was the result of being separated from the group, lost, injured, left behind. And it triggered a specific and immediate cascade of biological responses. Your heart rate changed. Your cortisol elevated. Your threat detection systems came online. Being alone in the ancient environment was a genuinely dangerous state. A lone human was a vulnerable human, and your body knew it. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent the later decades of his career studying the biological impact of social isolation on the human body and brain. What he found was not metaphorical. Loneliness, even temporary, even circumstantial, changed gene expression. It altered the way immune cells responded to threats. It elevated inflammatory markers in the blood. It disrupted sleep architecture at the neurological level. The body responded to isolation the way it responded to a physical injury. Not because it was dramatic, because it was accurate. In the ancestral environment, Being cut off from your group was an injury. It was a threat to survival as real as a wound. So what did ancient humans actually do when they were alone? The honest answer is that it almost never happened voluntarily. And when it did, when an individual deliberately separated from the group, it was almost always ritualized. It was marked. It was given meaning. Because an unmarked departure from the group was not solitude. It was something closer to exile. Think about what that means for the silence you sat in this morning. The quiet commute, the empty apartment, the stretch of afternoon before anyone else arrived. Your nervous system didn't know it was Tuesday. It didn't know there was a phone in your pocket. All it registered was the absence of the hum, the absence of the 150. And somewhere below your awareness, an ancient alarm began to tick. The cultures that did formalize solitude, and there were many, almost universally embedded it inside a container of meaning. The vision quest of indigenous North American traditions, the desert retreats of early Christian hermits, the meditative isolation practices of Buddhist and Hindu traditions, the 40 days, the vigil, the fast. In every case, the aloneness was not random. It was purposeful. It was bounded. There was a beginning, a defined duration, a return. And in almost every tradition, the person who emerged from the solitude was understood to have been changed by it, not damaged by it. Psychologist Esther Buchholz at New York University spent years arguing against the dominant psychological model of her time, which treated the human need for solitude as secondary to the need for connection. In her research, she proposed that solitude wasn't the opposite of belonging. It was the complement of it. That the capacity to be genuinely alone, not anxiously alone, not distractedly alone, but productively, creatively, regeneratively alone, was not a retreat from human nature, but an expression of its most advanced form. The distinction she drew was between aloneness and loneliness. Loneliness is involuntary. It is the experience of unwanted disconnection. It activates the threat response. It tells your nervous system that something has gone wrong. Aloneness, by contrast, is chosen. It is the deliberate withdrawal from the social field not to escape it, but to replenish the capacity to return to it. And the difference, neurologically, is enormous. When you are genuinely at ease in your own solitude, your default mode network, the brain system responsible for self-reflection, imagination, consolidation of memory, and the construction of your sense of self, activates in a way it almost never can when you are socially engaged. The noise of other people, even people you love, even comfortable familiar noise, suppresses a specific kind of internal processing that can only happen in quiet. Your ancestors didn't have access to this insight. They didn't have language for it. But the evidence suggests they found it anyway. The earliest cave art, Lascaux, Altamira, the handprints of Sulawesi dating back more than 45,000 years, was almost certainly made in solitude. A single human, deep inside a cave, far from the firelight of the group, making marks in silence. Not for an audience in the immediate sense, for something else. For something that required stepping outside the hum for long enough to hear a different frequency entirely. And here is the mirror that history holds up to your morning. The reason you reach for your phone in the silence is not weakness. It is not failure of discipline or character. It is the most ancient alarm system in your biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. Pulling you back toward the hum, back toward the signal that everything is safe, back toward the 150. The distraction is not the enemy. The distraction is the messenger. But what the messenger is telling you, if you can slow down enough to hear it clearly, is not that the silence is dangerous. It is that your nervous system has not yet learned to distinguish between the silence of exile and the silence of choice, between being abandoned and being free. That is not an ancient problem. That is a specifically modern one, because for most of human history, you never had to make that distinction. The silence was always meaningful. It was always bounded. It was always embedded in ritual or necessity. It was never just Wednesday afternoon with nothing in particular going on. You live in a world that offers you more solitude than any human in history has ever had to navigate. Empty apartments, solo commutes, work-from-home silence. The long quiet of a life lived increasingly through screens that simulate the hum without providing it. And you also live in a world that has, for the first time, given you the tools to choose your solitude deliberately, to make it bounded, to make it meaningful, to sit in it long enough that the ancient alarm quiets, the default mode network comes online, and whatever it was that the person in the cave was reaching for when they pressed their hand against the wall in the darkness, that thing becomes briefly available to you too. Think about the last time you were truly alone, and ask yourself whether you were exiled or free. The answer changes everything.